Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, folks of all stripes, and distinguished guests, put your hands together for the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Houston, we have Paul Salazar Jr.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast, your Houston sports podcast for diehard Houston sports fans, from a diehard Houston sports fan. I'm Paul Salazar Jr., your favorite diehard Astros fan podcaster. Feel free to add as many additional qualifiers to that statement to make it true. I'm an actor, improviser, writer, creative multi-hyphenate, and of course, I'm a proud Houston native, and I have the receipts to prove it. People might not know this, but I'm the jester they named T.C. Jester for. That's right. The joke that I'm still sticking with, it stands for that crazy jester. Look, I've spent the last decade or so, believe it or not, as a comedy writer in Los Angeles. And now, I'm podcasting. That's what happens when you hit 10 years out here. You start absent-mindedly calling it the 10 instead of I-10. And you start podcasting. Welcome to said podcast. Space Cadet Sports started as a passion project because most media is infuriating. As a diehard long-term fan of the Houston Astros and your other Houston sports teams, here we aren't doom and gloom casual fans, or worse, the national media haters. We love our teams and root them on, but also try to discuss the ins and outs of our teams without too much homerism. The key word here, of course, is try. Folks, we took a little bit of time off. Yeah, we're back. I announced maybe a little prematurely a couple weeks ago, we're back. A dinosaur story. But I also admitted this is a special time in my life right now, that the podcasts will be a little bit more sporadic. So today we're checking back in with your Texans. Sadly, it's not good news for your Texans. You know this already. We're checking back in with the Houston Rockets and FanFest with your Houston Astros. At this point, I'd like to welcome new listeners and welcome returning listeners to what my brothers call the Paul Broad Pod Ball Blog. Woof. Hey, brothers. Shout out to my brothers. They're both Milford men. Shout out to Arrested Development fans. And shout out to the subscribers on the Substack. That's right. Check out spacecadetsports.substack.com for the full blog experience, or the full blog experience, depending on your interpretation of my mumbles here. I promise I did my vocal warm-ups today. Very briefly, but I did them. We're recording this transmission here in sunny Los Angeles, where I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and co-producer, the Ross to my Frasier. Carla, the dog, is here with me. Well, technically, she is in the other room, but I do have the door open because that's good for recording sound. No, but just because she's had a tough day. The winds scare Carla, the dog. Longtime listeners of the podcast know that she may get on mic from time to time. She's got the hot takes on this podcast. In a world of ridiculous sports podcasters, emotional reactions, hot takes, and dudes yelling their opinion as if they're fact, I'm at least honest with you. I'm ridiculous. Also, I try to take the long view. I'm not here to get angry, hopefully. I try to remember that there's bigger dragons in this world to fight, and why torture ourselves by letting these sports bros rile us up in our emotions? We try to be reasonable here. I mean, to an extent, obviously. Sports are frustrating. I'm a trash-talking clown, and I get in my emotions just as much as anyone else. You know, I at least just want to admit this is a fan podcast. I'm an entertainer. I'm a diehard fan. I'm a clown. Okay, so be warned. Let's get to this podcast. Of course, before we completely rock into it, I wish a good day, mates, to all of our listeners. And look. There's a lot of crazy things happening in the world right now. I feel like I have to comment on things that are happening in America. Sadly, I feel the need. Honestly, I can't believe we live in a world that is so morally lost. Honestly. this won't take long, but for those of you wondering when we're going to get to the sports part of this podcast, it'll just give me a few minutes here. I mean, the fact is we have untrained masked men in the streets that are murdering people and kidnapping people, and it breaks my heart. And this is no surprise to any of the listeners. I make jokes. Anybody who has been paying attention to me or the things that I've said, of course, none of this comes as a surprise to you, I'm sure. I've been anti-ICE, since it was established. I've been against the dehumanizing way that people talk about immigration in this country my whole life. And, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here too, but I'm so hurt for Minnesota. I'm so hurt for immigrants. I'm so hurt for anybody that can be racially profiled. I'm hurt for my neighbors. I'm hurt for my community and this country. I'm sorry. It just hurts more because I feel like I've been ringing the alarm for so long now. I don't know what to say. I mean, I condemn these actions, these inhumane actions, and these inhumane organizations. And I hope that a lot of people can see the way that I've been seeing before it's too late. And I think a lot of people have said that I've been too political or alarmist. And, I'm very empathetic. And whenever I see people suffer, I suffer. I'm not the boy who cried wolf. I'm or anything like that. I know I rail against things like this all the time. But, I just want to highlight something that is absolutely terrifying, a little bit of what's happening out there right now. And I know people will be like, Paul, just stick to talking about sports. This is a sports podcast. But the reality of the situation is I can't talk about sports if ICE kidnaps me. Or worse. And I am a Latino man with a family to be concerned about and worry about in an area that has been targeted by this current administration. So it does affect me and this podcast. I'm so saddened by what honestly seems to be normalized now. And I pray for you. And I pray for us to find our way again. But I know I try not to be too sincere on this podcast, so I will now start to slowly melt that sincerity by putting this clown mask back on. There's so much more I wish I could say, but I don't have the words for them. I got emotional even saying that basic of a statement. But people know who I am. They know where I stand. And I'm, back to the show, back to the clown mask. I have the rubber nose back on. So now to some fun. Hooray! We get to talk about the Houston Texans. Just the saddest little, balloon floating. Not even floating, just hovering, like a foot above the floor. Like the balloons hover, like after the party's over. That's the fun part of this podcast. After all that, that's your fun. Your Houston Texans season ended in a catastrophe. Congratulations. Oh boy, it's not going to be an emotional podcast. No. Look, all the positivity that I tried to give you was smacked down, just like I was a jabroni who taunted The Rock. I should just burn that episode, the previous episode where I'm talking about the Houston Texans odds against the New England Patriots. Burn? Who am I? Delete. That's what you do with a file, Paul. That's where you can tell that I'm from the 1900s. Burn? What am I, the Joker? Like, I'm gonna burn the file. Anyway, look. My brain is mush. I'm emotional. I have to talk about the Houston Texans season ending in a terrible loss. My brain. Look, I don't have any excuse for pregnancy brain, but I'm going to blame pregnancy brain. Look, I've been busy with baby showers, baby moons, and taking care of, excuse me here, Borat voice, and my wife. So look, I apologize if if I'm a little all over the place. I have to talk about the Texans in this game. Look, I haven't been back on the podcast since the Texans game, so let's really get to what can only be described as a season ending in the worst way. I said in the previous episode that C.J. Stroud couldn't get much worse, and therefore he was due for a bounce-back game. And boy, was I wrong. Look, look, the Texans, here's where I was coming from, just defending that logic. I wasn't just being a homer, right? The Houston Texans were very good about not turning the ball over in the regular season. C.J. Stroud has won more playoff games than a lot of other quarterbacks out there. Now, albeit it's only like 3 playoff games, but still, the fact of the matter is we had some data to look at, and I was like, CJ Stroud just had the yips. He'll be fine. It couldn't get much worse because I have this body of work to look back on. Folks, I was wrong. I was completely wrong. He did get worse. It was terrible. It was not much fun to watch, I'll admit. I had an amazing time with my wife, a nice, amazing baby moon. But that part of the baby moon where my new wife had to watch me watch the Texans game and just see me slowly turn into a pool of emotions was not a good way, not a good metaphor for how well I'll be able to hold up as a husband in this relationship. Just immediately melting into just frustration and sadness, I guess delirium. I don't know. I felt all the emotions during that game. But folks, believe it or not, I've been talking for a really long time, and we have got to take a quick break. On the other side of this break, we'll talk some more Texans. We'll get to your Rockets. We'll get to your Astros. Don't worry, there's not too much soapbox going forward. We'll be right back. And we're back. Welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. I'm your irreverent host, Paul Salazar Jr. We're resetting for all the people who listen to the podcast right in the middle. Look, I don't know who you are. I don't know why you took that break there. I don't know what reason you must have needed. Look, folks, let's get to the podcast. We have a lot to talk about today. I haven't been on the podcast in a while. You can tell by how ridiculous I am being. But folks, I think it's because I just don't want to talk about the Texans right now. I'm trying to have a good day. But folks, we have to let out these frustrations. I say that, we can't just be toxic about sports. We can't just, defer our emotions or transfer, I should say, our emotions from our regular life onto sports and just be angry and hateful there. But also we can't just ignore our emotions. We have to let the frustrations out. We have to talk about the Texans, because then I could transfer those emotions somewhere else. Look, folks, you didn't know you were going to get therapy. But I mean, honestly, if you're a Houston Texans fan, you probably need some therapy after a game like that. So that's what I'm here for. For those of you who can't afford therapy, welcome. There's room around the campfire. Folks, let's talk about C.J. Stroud. Speaking of needing therapy, honestly, that's a somewhat cruel segue. However, I don't say it to be mean. Let's just put it that way. But C.J. Stroud's eyes were big. The man looks like he had the yips, and it looks like it got a lot worse in a big game, and the dude's confidence is shaken. Now, while I might have been a little jokingly cruel when I made that segue, I still think, get this man the sports psychologist from Ted Lasso. Honestly, I think he could benefit from a little bit of a reset and a little bit of a mental reset. Look, if I bump into a chair and I apologize and I feel bad for a week, I can't imagine how I would feel if I felt like I lost an entire playoff game pretty much single-handedly. Now, I don't think he deserves 100% of the blame of this loss, but I'm just saying, any regular human being with that many turnovers would probably feel a lot of the world on his shoulders. So that being said, I think what we need, is for our boy CJ Stroud to get a sports psychologist in there to help him overcome this hurdle, because if he comes back next season with the yips, if he starts to develop turnover problems, then we're in a sticky situation where we probably need to trade CJ Stroud. Like right now, I get it. People are upset in the city of Houston. It's a football town. People were finally excited about the football team being able to be contenders. It was an up and down season. People, other teams, the haters in the AFC South, put the Texans on fraud alert. I still think they're a very good team that had a very tough season and just ended in flames. Obviously, we're going to have to wear that for a while. But I really think that there is still a road to success for CJ Stroud with the Houston Texans. And maybe I am being a little bit too optimistic here, but he has the talent. He just needs to bounce back, and I think the only way he can do that, truthfully, is with a little bit of a sports psychologist and potentially even a new quarterbacks coach. Like, just start surrounding him with people where he could put that behind him and start trying to get back to those old CJ ways. But at the same time, with all that being said, with all the love to CJ Stroud, my God, it seems like an inanimate carbon rod would have been better than C.J. Stroud in that game, and I completely understand the frustration for so many people. I was frustrated too. I couldn't believe it. I was like, are they going to bring Davis Mills in this game? Now, I'm not saying that I was advocating for that. I don't think I would have wanted Davis Mills in that game, mostly because that's basically putting it out there that C.J. Stroud is on the market and you're trading him away. That would have been a huge confidence loss for CJ when he really, I just don't think that was the right time. But it was so bad of a performance that I was wondering what's going to happen. And, I think I understand the frustration. CJ's going to have to wear that loss for a while, There's going to be a lot of memes. I mean, he's going to have to wear those memes for a while. That was a horrendous performance, but like I said with the sports psychologist bit, I do think he can bounce back. I'm a Houston fan. I've seen James Harden. I've seen some meltdowns and bounce backs in my day is what I'm trying to say. Now, I'm not trying to say CJ is James Harden. I hope to God that CJ isn't just like an amazing regular season baller that struggles in some big moments. But right now, he needs to prove that allegation wrong. I think, we kind of thought CJ Stroud's ceiling was Patrick Mahomes, but there could be, where I'm coming at, where CJ has lost some points for me is just kind of there, what his ceiling could potentially be versus now versus where I thought it was, maybe in his rookie season. I think really the reality of the situation is quarterback is a tough position, and finding talent at the quarterback position, it takes time to develop, and there's not a lot of quarterbacks that have the talent as CJ right now. So trying to find a replacement doesn't feel like the wisest move. But I think while I'm not the type of guy that's like, hey, trade CJ, I might not be that angry at CJ. I'm just where he's lost a lot of bit of that shine for me is, where do you think CJ Stroud's ceiling is? Do you still project that he could be a superstar in this league like Patrick Mahomes? Or do you think that maybe he's more of a game manager quarterback and we're going to have him beat some of these big game allegations in order to change that kind of scouting report on him? Like I said, it seems like he's got the yips. Either way, no matter how you feel about it, no matter how I feel about it, I think what the Texans are doing is they are going to stick with their man. They're going to dance with the guy that brought him, and they're going to give CJ a little bit more time here next season to get right. Now, I'm not saying he's going to, like he's QB1, and they're locking that in and never thinking about it again. I do think that there is going to be a magnifying glass, CJ, I'm trying to say CJ, where's my metaphor? CJ's under the microscope? Yeah, I feel like next season they're going to be watching him very hard, and they're going to watch that development. I think that we're going to see some coaching changes, and I really hope that we get a sports psychologist in there for them. All that talking about CJ Stroud, he's going, even for me, who's saying the whole game is on him, he's going to have to wear that for a while. And he's going to wear it because it just seems like that defense was special. And I've been saying it all season. Maybe I've been overhyping them. Maybe, because I am a bit of a homer. I admit it. Finally, he admitted, but I really thought that this defense was special, and they deserved to break the Texans' curse of never making an AFC championship game. But alas, alack, the franchise is still cursed, and I was upset. Obviously this is me talking a good time after processing those emotions. If I was doing a podcast immediately after this game, I would be very angry. I was a very angry man. But no, I wasn't that angry. I was more disappointed. I'm about to be a father. I wasn't mad. I was just disappointed. Look, I truthfully thought that this team could have done it. This team, just like the Houston Astros of 2025, took me on a roller coaster. 3 games, after the first 3 games of the season, I thought the Texans were done. It was going to be a tough season. They brought me back to hoping and believing in them again, just to crush my spirits, just like the Astros did. Look, both of these teams so far, look, I don't want to throw the Rockets in there, but the Houston teams in 2025 have been a lot of solid defense and some lackluster offense, and it's been tough. If you've been on this roller coaster of emotions with me, comment on how your roller coaster of emotions has been in 2025 and how we want to be more stable in 2026, both emotionally and our sports teams. Look, I told you this was free therapy today, all right? I wish this team didn't have this ending. The defense definitely deserved better. I think if this team would have gone to the Super Bowl, we would have been talking about this defense in some elite levels. But now it's just going to be part of Texans franchise history. I'm sad to say. Next season it could be another great defense, but I do feel like this was a special little window for this defense. D'Amico Ryans always coaches up his defense, but I feel like it will be a little different going forward. Hopefully some of the defense can come back and be shored up in free agency and re-signing, restructuring contracts and stuff like that. Hopefully very soon they can break that franchise curse. But I do think next season they're going to be probably looking to improve that O-line and maybe bring in a couple of new weapons for CJ, whether that's at receiver or back, tight end. I'm really not sure what direction they will go in, but Nick Caserio is definitely going to be under the microscope as well for the upcoming offseason, I feel like, because a lot of fans are looking at him as to why the offense wasn't better. At least that's how I feel a little bit too. It's maybe on the roster over the play caller. Like obviously, Nick Haley, the offensive coordinator, he had a tough start to the season, but kind of turned it around. I started to believe in Haley's offense a little bit as it went on, but that also was a Nick Caserio hire. So, that's kind of on him too. So I feel like going into this offseason, I'm looking at Caserio's moves. I'm watching closely CJ Stroud's development and to who they're bringing around him to see if this offense can improve exponentially next season, I should say, and the defense can it's going to be hard to be as elite as they were last season, but if they can be ready to compete again with another swarm mentality defense. Moving on, let's talk about some Astros real quick. There's not a lot of Astros news going around this winter, obviously. The biggest thing that has happened probably is Kyle Tucker signing with the LA Dodgers. Heartbreaking I know. Also, get ready for a lockout. That's a conversation for another podcast. I said I wouldn't go on too many more soapboxes, so we won't talk about the lockout or impending lockout or strike. But Kyle Tucker breaking the hearts of Astros fans and or getting the Dodgers fans ire a little bit as he chose number 23 for the Dodgers because of his one of his mentors. That's right, Uncle Michael Brantley. Tucker is wearing Brantley's 23 from their time with the Astros. Also, Alex Bregman is headed to Chicago, wearing number 3 because he wants the 3rd chip. And Victor Caratini to the Minnesota Twins. So yeah, obviously, if some of the bigger news is other teams signing players that used to play for the Astros, there's not a lot of big Astros news going on right now. But with Victor Caratini to the Minnesota Twins, we are missing a big contributor to last season who really helped shore up the offense and the lineup when there were so many injuries. Hopefully, with the overabundance of infielders this season, we wouldn't have needed to depend on Caratini as lineup help or injury help. But we are going to miss him as a backup catcher. That's 100% for sure. So I guess, do I hear Mi Primo's Musica? Is it time for Cesar Salazar, or is the team going to find a backup catcher in free agency or with some deals? Obviously, I mentioned earlier, there's too many infielders. That remains a case. We have Christian Walker, Jose Altuve, who's been mentioned will be playing a lot more at second base and left field this upcoming season. Jeremy Pena, Carlos Correa. We have Isaac Paredes. So that's 5 starters and only 4 spots. With that being said, maybe this is that deal for Boston is still on the table. We've heard a lot of rumors about it, but nothing really came into fruition. People are saying that maybe Wilmer Abreu over Duran, Yoran Duran. Abreu is more of the player that the Astros are looking for, but the Astros, the reports are that they would trade Isaac Paredes to the Red Sox, to take Bregman's spot there, seeing that Bregman's now in Chicago. And, while the Red Sox need infielders, the Astros need outfielders, so they would take Abreu. But because this really never came into fruition, I feel like this is more of a rumor category. Obviously, I'm a fan. I have no sources. I'm just reading the same things that you guys are able to read. I'm just saying I feel like this isn't coming to fruition. This is not happening. Like I said in the past, I think the Astros will go into the season looking for a trade, but not feeling like they have to reach to make a trade and make a trade at a bad price. The market is just not there for the Astros right now, so maybe they'll just wait for teams that really need an Isaac Paredes. But Dana Brown also said he's looking for a lefty bat, which he says he's always doing, maybe a new lefty bat, but that probably not a big name that will move the meter. And I feel like this is kind of the roster that the Astros are going to take into spring training. Maybe that lefty bat is just Jesus Sanchez. But this roster will have a lot of options for players and pitchers, and it almost feels like there's too many options. But I think that this is a roster they'll go into the season, at least spring training with, seeing how everybody starts off, maybe making a move that won't be too exciting, but it's just bringing the right people for the right fit. Just kind of having an overabundance of players waiting for an waiting for an injury to potentially happen, which sucks to kind of say, but maybe it's just kind of that insurance look, or just to trade later in the season to stay flexible and stay competitive with too many options and see who they can move. But folks, we're going to take one more quick break. We'll be right back to finish up talking about some Houston Rockets. We'll be right back.
H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
And we're back. Welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast from your little 5 or 15-second break, whatever you're taking there. Welcome back. Folks, we just got done talking about your Houston Astros and kind of a little bit of the winter cold stove, if you will, kind of trying to read the tea leaves of comments made at FanFest and prepping for the Astros roster going into spring training, and I'm saying I'm thinking it's going to be kind of like the roster they already have, but I do anticipate a potential big trade for this Astros roster before the trade deadline. I think Dana Brown, the Astros general manager, is just waiting for a better market to do a trade. Because right now, I think if he traded Isaac Paredes if he tried to trade Christian Walker, there just would not be too great of a return, or they would have to package a lot more players than they're willing to package. And I don't know if you pay attention to how people rank the Houston Astros farm system, but once again, it is towards the bottom of the barrel when people rank it. Now, the Astros always develop good to great talent, but that's just how it is. A lot of people do not value a lot of the commodities in that farm system, so you'd have to give up more. So I think Dana Brown's just doing some shopping, waiting for a better price. But we'll see there. Moving on to your Houston Rockets. Look, the last time we talked about the Rockets, they were going in to play the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Rockets were kind of taking a beating, having a tough January. They're tough, like I said, they're tough December leading into a tough January. And they did lose to that Oklahoma City team a couple weeks ago. But, I think this is a time to just try to figure out our expectations of this team, but the time to do it wouldn't be exactly after that Oklahoma City loss. Since that Oklahoma City loss, they beat Minnesota 105-111. They beat New Orleans 110-119. They beat San Antonio. This was a great game. I watched this one with Sarah. 106-111 win. Just Alperen Sengun completely outplaying Wemby. That was a lot of fun. However, then the turnaround to an overtime loss to Philadelphia, losing 122-128 to the 76ers, and a tough one right as they were starting to get some swag, get some spice, taking a big kind of demoralizing loss there. Then they beat Detroit 111-104, and I got to watch all of that one too. I mean, Detroit looks good and is one of the best teams in the East this season, so seeing them rise to the occasion, play that team with some toughness, Jabari Smith Jr. Playing with some grit, playing with some tude. That was a tude there. And then they beat Memphis 108-99. So look, while they have had some tough some tough sledding in January, since we last talked, they have actually started to turn things around just a little bit, at least by getting some wins, getting getting the right outcome to the game is what I think I'm trying to say. I apologize. At least while there might be some struggles and while there might be some, some growing pains, show me that smile again. While they're going through some growing pains, are they actually getting the result that we need them to have to be in the top in the West? And they are getting those wins, and they are starting to look better. I think Alperen Sengun is starting to look a little healthier. There were some rumors for a while that maybe he came back too quickly, and maybe that was the case. He does seem to be stronger and more effective as a player now. Reed Shepherd is still, I think this season, a couple weeks ago we were talking, really kind of looking at Reed Shepherd, looking at Amen Thompson, and looking at Jabari Smith Jr., to see if these three young players can develop into the player that this Rockets team needs them to be. My friend Eddie, I was talking to him about it, and he's like, yeah, I want Amen and Reed to develop, but Jabari is getting that big boy check, so we need him to be more effective. He needs to hit those shots. He needs to play tough and get those rebounds. I do think, to an extent, Jabari, we need to look at him a little bit closer here. But yeah, I do think they're all developing. They're all slowly getting better. We wish they were getting better a little bit quicker to those role adjustments. But I'm really liking what I'm seeing from them. And the Rockets are now 28-16, and they play the Spurs tonight. As of the recording of this podcast, today is Tuesday, the 27th. And we're going to get to see in this big test if they are real and how much they've grown in the last couple of weeks. and if they've really settled past these growing pains. Show me that smile, show me that smile. Okay, folks, look. I'm not going to sing much longer. Maybe just the rest of the theme song. No, look, I know I've taken up a lot of your time. We're going to see how these Rockets do against the Spurs. However, I do think that little bump, that little growing pain, they're past, and hopefully they can get better. And at the trade deadline, they're going to improve this team. GM Raphael Stone is definitely going to get somebody. I don't know if it's going to be a ball handler, or if it's going to be a center because we lost Steven Adams to injury, or maybe it'll be both, some kind of combination. But let me know what you think you would want this Rockets team to go to get at the trade deadline, if you're looking for a point guard / ball handler type, or if it's a center, or even who those options could be. There might not be good options for what the team needs, but let me know what you see out there, what you think GM Raphael Stone should do to make this Rockets team better and have them compete in the Western Conference Championships game, I should say, this season. Or is that your goal? I said that was my goal, but maybe you have different aspirations for this Rockets. Let me know what you think this Rockets team is going to do. And that's going to do it for this transmission, Space Cadets. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, share, bop it, kick it, skip it, smash all of those buttons for me. We're a small podcast and only go as far as our listenership takes us, so please help us out. We're supported by listeners like you. Share with a Houston fan or Australian in your life and give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. Reach out on social media or call in. Social media is at Space Cadet Sports. You can let me know what you think of the Rockets. Let me know what you think the Texans need to do to rebuild, or how you think this Astros roster is going to shake out before spring training. Or you can call in and let me know on SpeakPipe. That's speakpipe.com/Space Cadet Sports. Or, of course, you can just comment directly on Substack. That's right. That's spacecadetsports.substack.com, where you can subscribe to support. You just put your email in there, or you get the app and get your notifications there. It's for free. 99% of what we do is not behind a paywall. If you would like to subscribe to Premium, thanks so much. I appreciate that support. That's just a small fee that helps us keep the lights on around here. If you'd like to support but you don't want to subscribe, you can get some merch. That's right, merch is here. We have Don't Sleep on Houston shirts, Carla the Dog hats, and H-Town Blue, and you can find that on my website. That's paulsalazarjr.net, because I'm nothing but net. And if you made it this far in the podcast, you must like me on some kind of weird level. You can find me on social media making jokes, memes, arts, podcasts, and so much more at paulsalazarjr, or that website again, paulsalazarjr.net, where you can find my other Substack and all my other nonsense, if you're nasty. Thanks for listening. Remember to be the best that you can be. Keep your head up, kid. And as always, vamos, vamos, Houston.